Greetings YouTube, Alan Liu back here with the last installment of my Heavy Hitters First Impressions videos, and I'm going to be covering Brutes today. If you haven't checked out my previous videos, I've done one on Warrior and Guardian. Keep in mind this is all still very first impression stuff. There's definitely a lot of things I missed. Some cards effects I probably didn't get correct, but you know, for the most part, my thoughts remain somewhat the same. As more time has passed, you know, we've gotten more time to digest the new heroes, play around with them, and my thoughts have definitely, you know, changed a bit since like my initial impressions, but I probably will be going over that more so if I do like a predictive tier list video for the upcoming meta. So I'll probably do that sometime next week. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Oh, one more thing to note. Brute is probably the class I am least knowledgeable about out of the three, out of Guardian, Warrior, and Brute. But I'm still just going to give my overall thoughts on things. So first, let's talk about Kayo. Overall, Kayo seems quite strong at outputting consistent damage, but at deck building cost. Reminds me almost of Boost Dash. And that's because, like, with Kayo, you're discarding your cards a lot. But you're not fatiguing as fast as Boost Dash because, well, your attacks are larger for the most part. And you have, like, Mandible Claw and things like that. Whereas Dash, you know, you're coming in for 3, Boost go again 4, 5, 6. Kayo will come in for, like, 6 or 8, things like that. So overall, it's that part is reminiscent. For the most part, he just seems to be like very damage based. His ability is you only get one weapon. Attack action cards get +1 while they are in any zone other than the combat chain. So things like in your deck, in your hand, in your grave, things like that. And the first time you discard a card with 6 or more power during each of your action phases, meaning only on your own turn, create a might token. So that might token means that whenever you're discarding something by some effect, you're getting another +1 of value. And you have a ton of added consistency because all your 5 power blues are now 6 power. So, you know, back then Brute just mainly had like Wrecker Romp, and now you have like a bajillion other blues that you can play. Like all of your blues can be 5 power basically. So KO is very consistent at things like Blood Rush Bellow, you know, what are some other discard effects? Savage Swing, Bare Fangs, Wild Ride, Pulping, just like the whole suite, just anything you can think of in Brute, really, KO will just make it more consistent. Whereas Rhinar is coming back, not as explosive as KO, but counters fatigue / attrition better. So Rhinar's mechanic is Intimidate. You know, whenever you discard a card with 6 or more power, intimidate the opponent. So if you're playing against something like Victor or, well, Oldham's gone, but any other defensive deck, maybe even like a defensive Bravo deck that's running, you know, big D reacts, Rhinar will intimidate those away. You can't block with your full hand. It makes things really awkward. And, you know, Intimidate in general has a very, like, bad rap, and, like, for good reason, somewhat. You're not, you know, presenting any extra damage. So against decks that are faster, Rhinar is, you know, not as good as KO, but against decks that are more defensive, Rhinar is better than KO. So that's basically the toss up that from the two Brutes. And then also let's talk about Levia also. Levia, she has bigger card pool because Shadow. She can probably do some crazy things, but I'm not Levia expert. Levia, I would say, is just like, if KO is like consistent damage output, Rhinar is like combating fatigue. Levia is just like high ceiling, low floor. You can kill yourself. You can absolutely explode your opponent. And more difficult to play, more difficult to deck build, just because there's more factors going on. So that's my overview of the 3 Brutes. I think all of them will be good. I think, you know, KO will probably be the most popular just because he's the most, I guess, proactive is the simple game plan. Like with Rhinar, you want to meta game if you expect the meta to be full of, you know, like slower fatigue decks or things like that, or even like, you know, like 2-card 8 decks, like maybe even like Dash, things like that. Oh, and Brute also has, you know, Arc Smash and things like that, so they're naturally good against Dash. But And then Levia is just like, you love the hero, you like being explosive, you don't care about consistency, you just want to like do crazy stuff and really learn the ins and outs of a more complicated deck. So with that being said, that's my rundown of the 3 brutes. I'm hoping I'm not missing one. I don't think I'm missing one. I didn't talk about Bolton in the Warrior video, but anyways, moving on. Let's go on to the weapons. Let's first talk about Mandible Claw. This one's already in the game. It came out in Crucible. If you've discarded a card with 6 or more attack this turn, Mandible Claw's attacks get go again. So with Rhinar and Levia, you constantly see them running double Mandible Claw, so they can do Blood Rush Bellow into Claw into another brute attack. And that is like with Blood Rush, 10 from Claw, and then hopefully like another 8 from your brute attack. So that's like an 18 damage turn off like a Tunic Blood Rush or something like that. But the consistency is that you're drawing 2 random cards, so you don't know if you have the blues, you don't know if you even draw a good attack, things like that. And then for Kayo, since he can only run 1 Mandible Claw, Blood Rush Bellow isn't as crazy, but it's still good. You play Blood Rush Bellow, you discard, you make a Might token, and then you'll draw 2. You can go Mandible Claw for 5 into another attack for 8 or 10, and then depending if you have an agility, you can extend that turn even more. The agility tokens this set really put a question mark on how to build all these brute decks. Like Levia can probably fit in some agility to get bigger turns. Rhinar can do it too. Rhinar might lean more into the beat chest mechanic. But yeah, so Mandible Claw is, you're going to see this weapon all the time. Ball Breaker and Mini Meat Axe I don't want to talk about too much. I feel like they're more limited weapons in general. When this attacks, draw a card, discard a random card. This could be interesting for Rhinar, maybe, if you go like discard a 6 with Beat Chest and then Mandible Claw, Mini Meat Axe, and then you intimidate them twice. But you're just going to fatigue yourself faster. I don't need Rhinar, really needs the help intimidating that much. In KO, you only get 1 weapon. It's going to be Mandible Claw. Levia, probably not going to be the case. It's interesting because this could fill up your graveyard faster as Levia. But I don't know if that's going to make it better than Mandible Claw. Same thing with Ball Breaker. If you discarded a card, this gets +1. I think Go Again is just more valuable than +1, and most decks would probably agree. So let's move on. Apex Bonebreaker. This card is pretty crazy. So Temper 2 is already kind of insane. I think, we've been talking about how like at least the past year, the new sets have felt a little powered down, but I feel like Heavy Hitters is like, pushing that power up a little more. Like Temper 2, with this defends with the card with 6 or more, create a Might token. So you block with it twice. Let's say you get its effect twice. You're getting 5 points of value from your equipment, assuming that you wanted to block with that card anyways. So there's no opportunity cost. Yeah, compared to something like Crater Fist, whose effect is almost never used, that's just 3 value on equipment. This is 5, which is pretty insane. Even doing something simple like block with a card in Apex and then you go CNC for 7 is like pretty damn good. There's the consistency issue where like, with brutes, some of your cards don't even block, your 6 power cards. But for KO, this will be extremely consistent because, you're getting +1. Actually, no. Never mind. This doesn't work with KO's hero ability because that says other than the combat chain. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it won't work with KO's ability. So it still needs to have actual base 6 power, but it's still just really good. Like even if you get 4 points of value from this with just 1 Might token, that's still crazy good. And a lot of brute decks have been playing more with Gambler's Gloves just because, Scab Skins was a big way to extend brute turns. But with this whole like agility package coming into the game, I can definitely see a lot of decks just play Scab Skins for 3 armor and then Apex Bonebreaker and then not try to roll Scabs at all unless it's like extremely crucial for you to win the game in that late game scenario, which may happen. And because of that, Scab Skin still has upsides, but you're not necessarily playing into it all the time and relying on Gambler's Gloves to save you if you roll a 1. Knucklehead, KO specialization, blocks 2, temper, destroy this, roll a 6-sided die until end of turn. Your base intellect is the number rolled. So I think in limited, obviously this card is crazy. It's temper 2. You could high roll a 5 or a 6 and draw up, and you might even just win the game from there if that happens. The awkward part is that it uses your action, doesn't have go again, so it's possible you do this after you block out or something, but I don't think this card will see much play in CC. I think the other helmets just have way too much upside and consistency. Like Helm of Eisen's Peak is already a card in Bravo, and that's you don't even roll a dice for that. And sure, you get one more block on this, but then it's like Bravo literally never used that card. So at least when Arcanite Skullcap came out, and that was like a conditional, 3 block worth of value. And then when Crown of Providence came out, Arcanite Skullcap is just like not played anymore. So Crazy Unlimited in CC, I don't think this will see any play, unfortunately. I could be wrong, maybe there's upside, but I'm just not seeing it personally. Monstrous Veil, Rhinar Specialization, destroy this, draw a card, then discard a random card, go again. This one's fine. It's battle worn, so you get to block one, and you still get to use its effect. Draw, discard, means you get to intimidate. But also, all of the brutes have access to Scowling Fleshbag, which is like one of the most insane headpieces in the game. So even if you're not on Crown of Providence or Balance of Justice, if you have Scowling Fleshbag, then I would not run either of these over that. Rami, limited card. Majestics, I think most of these are pretty good, except for one, and we'll talk about that. Send Packing, 3 for 6 yellow. So 3 for 6 yellow is, pretty okay. The damage is like kind of on rate. When this attacks, banish a card from their arsenal. When the chain link resolves, if this didn't hit, return the banished card to its owner's hand. So this card is like a baby CNC, and honestly has like some different upsides compared to CNC. Like CNC, defense reactions can't be played, so if they got a D-React in Arsenal, they can't play it anyways. This card, if they have a D-React in Arsenal, you banish it, they don't get to play it, and then even when, if they do block it, their D-React just goes back to hand. The only downside I can see to this card is like you're playing against a Guardian and they Arsenal like a really bad blue, and they're planning on Crown of Providencing it away, and then you play this, and then you let that blue go back to their hand to like facilitate their turn. But that's more niche. Overall, the card is just good. Let's say you're playing against Azalea. If they're not able to block this, this goes back to hand, which means they can't flip Skullbone Cross Wraps. Any other scenarios? I can't think of too many things, but just overall, it's like a CNC effect. But it's yellow. It costs 3 instead of 2, but it still blocks 3. It's a brute attack, which means it synergizes with all your Blood Rush Bellows and stuff like that. Overall, card's really good. Show No Mercy is the new Rhinar specialization. When this attacks a hero, intimidate them. You don't need a discard for this effect. If the defending hero has no cards in hand, this gets +3. So this is a static effect, I believe. So that means even if they, let's say you intimidate them twice, you play Show No Mercy, they block with 2 cards, this still will get +3 because now they have no cards in their hand after they block. So once again, this is sort of like Rhinar's thing compared to Kayo, where it's like you have more like evasive, getting damage through abilities. And this will be good against more defensive decks, which Victor is now the new poster boy for a defensive deck. Like all of the players who really love that Oldham playstyle, like are just gonna love Victor. And I don't know how I feel about Victor. I'm so conflicted. Anyways, card is good. Low downside or no downside. It's a 3 block, cost 3 for 6. Intimidate. It's not like Alpha Rampage where you need to discard like another card. So overall, card is good. Cast Bones, reveal the top 6 cards of your deck, create a might token for each card with 6 or more power, reveal this way, put the revealed cards on top of your deck in a random order. If you control 6 or more might tokens, create an agility token. So this card, obviously, if in a perfect world where you reveal 6 power attacks off the top, you get 6 might tokens and an agility. So for one card, you're getting 6 points and an agility, which hard to say the value. Let's give it at least 1. It's like 0 for 7 on the top end, which is like Celestial Cataclysm without the setup. Obviously, this doesn't have Go Again, so you need to end your turn with it, or you'll need to block out and play this. But overall, this card is really insane at setting up really big turns. It's probably going to see more play in KO because, you have more 6 power attacks because of your hero ability. And I think, I talked about how KO, like there's a fear of KO possibly be getting fatigued or, having a harder time into more defensive decks that can just afford to block him out, and he slowly discards and gets rid of his deck. Cast Bones is definitely a nice tool to sort of set up, bigger turns to go over rather than just, representing like 9 or 12 every turn. This can, get you like 20 plus in a turn if things line up. So card is good. Whether or not it'll be like a 3 of or something, or a main board or a sideboard, I'm not sure. But Cast Bones is another one of those cards where if this is like one of your main game plans, that means like you can't really run other stuff like Pummel, or you don't want to run stuff like Zealous or Rouse. You probably wouldn't run those anyways because Kayo doesn't have Anathos. He has Mandible Claw, so Zealous only really comes in for 9. I mean, Red Zealous is still a 6 power attack, so it's something you could look into. But yeah, overall, card will probably, be a 2 or 3 of at least in KO, but who knows. Moving on, Reckless Charge. Roll a 6-sided die, gain action points equal to half the number rolled, rounded down. If you've rolled a 6 on a die this turn, draw a card. So let's not talk about the high roll upside because, that requires you to roll a 6, and then that's just a 1 in 6 chance. Sure, if you hit the high roll, you get 3 action points and you draw a card. Amazing, but overall, I don't think this card will see play at all. It's not an attack, so it doesn't synergize with all your other KO stuff that wants you to discard 6 power attacks. If you roll a 2, you basically just lost a card and did nothing. If you roll a 3 or a 4, you get an extra action point, which is great, but you lost a card for it, so what is that really worth? Overall, I don't think this card will see play. No Fear. As an additional cost to play this, banish any number of cards with 6 or more attack from your hand. At the beginning of the end phase, return them to your hand. The next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent X of that, where X is 2 plus the number of cards banished. So this card I really hate as a Bravo player. Let's say I'm playing against KO, and let's say people figure out a way where I'm not able to, just fatigue him by putting in 3 blocks and D-reacts in my deck. So let's say I want to be aggressive. I play a Crippling. They block with 1 card from hand, and then they play this from Arsenal. They banished 3 cards. They blocked 5, or they blocked 8 with 2 cards, and then they get a 3-card hand back. I think this card is like pretty good in the matchups where it's good, obviously. Like, for example, Azalea or Bravo or even Azuri, things like that. Decks that are trying to disrupt you with on-hit effects with some sort of evasion, whether it's Azuri's ability or Azalea Dominate or Bravo Dominate. This helps, stop against Pummel. If you have this in Arsenal, they CNC, you block 6, then they Pummel, you play No Fear, that covers up 4. So this card has a lot of upside. Whether or not it will see play really depends on what people's game plan into KO is, whether that's to disrupt them and play a value game or to simply block out. If the opponent's blocking out, this card is garbage. It doesn't block. It's red, so what's the point, right? But overall, I still think the card is really good. So I think all of the Majestics are really good except for Reckless Charge, unfortunately, but it is what it is. You can't, not everything can be bangers, right? All right, let's move on to the rares and commons. A lot of these are just like different flavors of brute stuff, and for the most part, not that important. Beast mode, if you've intimidated this turn, this gets +2. This one seems fine. It's a 3 for 8 if you've intimidated. Like, you can beat chest into beast mode, and that's, all good and dandy. I don't know if this sees play. I'm not a Rhinar player, unfortunately. Pack Call, this one probably sees play, especially blue for KO. When this defends, reveal the top card of your deck. If it has 6 or more attack, put it on top. Otherwise, put it on bottom. So this is perfect if maybe you have like 3 or 6 misses in your KO deck and you want to play Bare Fangs or Wild Ride, which is the random draw discard, and you block with Pack Call. It just adds more consistency to a semi-random deck. Like, KO just really reduces the randomness because, you're adding +1 to everything. But for Rhinar, this one, I've seen yellow. The yellow one came in Classic Battles, didn't it? I don't remember. But Pack Call's a good card. It's a returning card. Rawhide Rumble. 2 cost, beat chest. This is the new mechanic for brute. Beat chest. When this attacks a hero, if you've beaten chest this turn, intimidate them. So this one has a additional cost to beat chest. It's an optional additional cost, but if you pay the cost, then the text applies. So let's say you have a 3-card hand and you do Rawhide. You play Rawhide Rumble. You beat chest. Then you get if you're playing Rhinar, which I feel like beat chest leans more towards Rhinar. Because whereas KO, you just want all these, attack action cards to really power up your stuff. Rhinar leans more into like beat chest and like intimidate. So this card by itself intimidates twice with 3 cards. Let's say you can extend that even further because this costs 2. You have that. Where's the non-attack? That Bonebreaker Bellow. So the thing about beat chest is that they synergize together. So if you have 2 cards in your hand with beat chest, as long as one of them beats your chest, then you satisfy the conditions for both. So let's say you play this one first, you discard a card, you're getting +5, you intimidate, and then you go into Rawhide Rumble. You've already beaten chest this turn, so you get an additional intimidate. You don't get an extra intimidate because you're still only discarding one card. But, you know, +5, this comes in for a 4-card 11, intimidate twice. That's pretty good. It's a block 3, it's a 6 power, it costs 2. Not sure what more else you would want from a deck. Rhinar and Kayo will probably play Tunic for the most part, and so 2 costs synergize with Pummel and Tunic. So the card is good. I really have not looked, of all the decks, of all the heroes that have come out, the only deck that really I haven't taken a look at is Rhinar, unfortunately, so I can't give too much commentary there. Oh, and Levia, because Levia is just like, I don't know what Levia is doing. Every time I sit against Levia, shoutouts to other Alan, I literally just play my cards and hope things go okay. Assault and Battery, another beat chest. When this attacks, if you've beaten chest this turn, create an agility token. So this one's also really good. 3 for 7, so it's the same rate as Rawhide Rumble, except instead of intimidate, you get an agility. Agility is a premium token, so obviously this is good. But 3 card 7 by itself, make an agility. If you assume the agility is worth 1 again, which once again, it's really hard to rate these tokens. It could be worth like 6 or it can be worth nothing. Create an agility token, so it seems it's good, but hard to really evaluate. If you put more beat chest effects together, obviously they synergize. Like, for example, if you've played this one turn and then in your next turn you go into Rawhide Rumble and Assault and Battery, you chain them, like only one needs to beat chest. You have an agility and you get to loop them 4-card hands, like a 4-card hand 13 if you have these two together with an agility. So that's pretty good, and if you can do that over and over and you're intimidating twice every turn, that's a pretty good formula for beating, defensive decks. Bare Fangs, this card is extremely high rate due to its semi-random effect. Obviously in KO, this effect will be extremely consistent. It basically comes in as a 2 for 8, and 2 cost stuff is really important because with 2 blues you can go 2 costs, Mandible Claw 2 cost. With 3 costs, it kind of gunks it up a little more. If you want to run Pummel, if that's your jam, 2 costs is obviously way better than 3 costs with Tunic. Overall, the difference between 2 costs and 3 costs for Brute is like pretty major, I would say. More so in KO than in Rhinar. But it also depends, like, if you're on Blood Rush stuff. Because especially if you're on Rhinar or Levia, then, Mandible Claw, 2 costs is much more consistent to hit than Mandible Claw 3 costs. But with Tunic and all these other things, you can definitely make up for it. But yeah, draw this card in KO is obviously going to be super consistent. So 2 for 8 is really good. It's a no block, but if you're KO and you want to be aggressive, then you're not really blocking anyways. Pack Hunt, when this attacks Intimidate, this card is just good. 2 for 6, blocks 3. The Intimidate is sometimes very important. Sometimes it does nothing. Sometimes it's really good. That's just the thing with Intimidate. Obviously, if you pair this with other Intimidate effects, it'll also be really good. But yeah, with the beat chest mechanic and stuff, Rhinar can definitely consistently intimidate like 2 or 3 cards a turn. And on his more off turns, he still might intimidate 1, which, if he intimidates your block card or your D-React or a card that you really wanted to block with, then it just is really annoying. But the thing with Rhinar is if you're an aggressive deck and you don't care about blocking, then intimidate doesn't really matter that much. It can somewhat matter even in an aggro matchup because not even aggro decks, quote unquote aggro decks, can convert all 4 or 5 cards all the time. So it's just less. Intimidate is less important obviously in aggro, but there is a still sliver of a chance that it is important. Plus this is a reprint. It's been around. People run it. Another beat chest. Pound Town, 3 for 7. When this attacks, if you've beaten chest this turn, create a might token. Overall, I think agility has a higher ceiling than might token. If you have an agility token and your opponent disrupts you, then your agility turns into 0. Whereas it's easier to hold on to at least 1 card to even swing Mandible Claw, so you're still getting that might token value. Whereas with agility, you basically need 3 cards to even do anything, unless you're running some like weird 0 attack, snatch, E-Strike stuff. Even E-Strike would still need 3 cards to do something with agility. But yeah, so overall, another beat chest card, solid mechanic. I don't really know how this will all turn out when added together, but interesting to see. Now that I think about it, I wonder if there's ever gonna be like a KO beat. No, because KO doesn't intimidate. Never mind. Don't listen to anything I said. But yeah, moving on. Wild Ride, another similar to Bare Fangs. Draw, discard a random card, 6 or more. This gains go again. No block. Very good KO card. Sees play and also Rhinar and Levia. The consistency is less so. What's the word I'm looking for? The consistency is not as good as KO, obviously, but the card is still good overall. In Levia and Rhinar, you're kind of starved for action points if you want to be the aggressor in a certain matchup. Rhinar sort of kind of cares less about this in a way because against slower matchups you can just intimidate, and against faster matchups maybe there's better tools for racing than Wild Ride, like maybe you have more disruption. But overall, card is good. We'll see play in brute decks. I'm just not sure which ones. I'm sorry. Bonebreaker Bellow. I talked about this already. It's 1 for 5 beat chest. By itself, it is it's like a 2-card 1 for 5. So it's almost like if E-Strike was costed 1, if that makes sense. Because E-Strike can ditch any card. With Bonebreaker Bellow, you can discard any card. It can be a red, it can be a yellow, it can be a blue. But the really important thing about this is that if this allows you to beat your chest before all your other beat chest cards like Pound Town or Assault and Battery or Rawhide Rumble. So definitely a huge synergy piece there. I don't know if there's enough beat chest support overall, because even with these cards we only see 4 beat chest cards, if I'm correct. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 beat chest cards. So is that enough of an engine to make it into Rhinar decks? Maybe. It's also more consistent. Like if you beat chest, you can choose to discard your beast within. You don't need to do some weird block shenanigans where you have to block a certain way or something like that. But yeah, overall card is good. I'm not sure how good exactly the engine is, but overall Rhinar is more of a deck that is more specific to certain meta games. You can definitely do very well as Rhinar, even if you run into Fi, Katsu, Levia, Bolton, other things like that. But in terms of his place in the metagame, that's where I would say Rhinar is more so to be an answer to Oldhim type decks or Victor type decks, those kind of things. So those are all the brute specific cards. Nope, one more. Smash back Elhorn, create agility and might. All of these cards are really good. I would say the Ale one is probably the least impactful one, the Guardian one. But for example, the Goblet for Warrior and the Elhorn for Brute are both really good because they make agility, and agility is a really high ceiling. And in a blue, if you have a really high ceiling card, lets you extend, probably will just be really good. Less good in KO, obviously, because it's not an attack, so it's not synergistic with your deck. Does this still make the cut? I don't know. Maybe it's a 2 of, maybe it's a 1 of, maybe it's a 3 of. But overall, the card is good. I imagine it will see play in some either Levia or Rhinar decks. So those are all the brute-specific cards. Nothing too stand out in terms of the rares and commons. I would say the main one is the new beat chest mechanic, because KO kind of just uses the whole card pool of 5 attack, 5 cost, 5 attack blues. Levia already has a really deep card pool, and I don't think she'll use beat chest that much. But all of the agility tools, all of the brutes can definitely use. So let's move on a little bit to the hybrid cards. If there's anything that I think is big, talk a big game. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of this card, but it can definitely be very cool, especially in Rhinar when you intimidate, and you can kind of if you somehow manage to line up a Blood Rush Bellow into talk a big game into somehow intimidate all of their cards, then you can just push through a ton of damage and make a ton of might tokens. So that's pretty cool. It's also interesting because in KO, what's that one? Where's the card? Never mind. This doesn't have. Oh no, it does have go again. But I don't know. Cards interesting. Clash of Might. Might see some play in Brute. Probably not, in my opinion. Clash is pretty good, especially if you're Brute, because you have a lot of high power attacks. You only really will be less consistent at clashing into Guardian compared to probably any other deck in the game. So I could see, for example, maybe Rhinar or Levia will run Clash of Might in their blue spot because it's not a 6 power, but there's not too many other options. You got Reckless Swing, you have Wrecker Romp, you have some other stuff. Once again, my Brute knowledge is a bit lackluster, but This is definitely going to be a Victor card because, you know, Clash stuff. But 6 power, 2 cost. It's interesting. Nothing too crazy. Battered, not broken. Next time you do build damage, prevent 2. If you do create a might token. Once again, I think these are more limited specific. Like, I think if you're going to run something like this, you would much rather run the Majestic one. That banishes your hand and lets you prevent a bunch more damage. Because that lets you keep your hand while still, what's it called? Blocking. Like, even, another crazy situation. Let's say I dominate a Crippling, and they don't even want to block. They play this from Arsenal. They banish their whole hand. They don't discard anything, and they blocked, you know, at most 6, which is crazy. All this Guardian hate, man. I'm kidding. Moving on, Mighty Wind Up. Instant discard this, create a Might token. This will probably see play in Rhinar, as well as maybe even the other, probably even the other brutes. It blocks 2, which isn't ideal, but in KO, if you discard this, you make 2 Might tokens, 1 from your ability and 1 from this card. Obviously, it's not ideal because you're doing it on your turn. So it's not like a turn 1 play you can do. I mean, it's still a turn 1 play you can do if you don't expect to leak damage, so that's pretty good. As for Rhinar, you can discard this, you intimidate them, and you make a Might token. That's pretty good. The agility one also obviously is very good. Rising Power, if you've drawn a card this turn, this gets +1. This one's probably less good in my opinion than the others. It's a 2 for 6, but it blocks 2, and it's a conditional +1, more of a limited card, I would say. The Wage card's not super impressed. Lead with Power. This one's pretty interesting. Maybe even in like Levia or something. Like you can buff up some, I don't know, Dread Screamer. No, does Dread Screamer cost 3? I'm blanking. I don't know, Boneyard Marauder or something, right? I think it's more probably core to a deck like Betsy, but it's definitely interesting. 1 for 4 go again in a deck that doesn't naturally extend turns very easily. Still good. Runner. This card's probably insane for every brute. It's 6 power. It costs 2. It blocks 3. If you have an agility, you remake your agility. This just lets you, you know, extend your turns and go crazy. Probably like we'll see play in every brute deck. Clash of Agility. This one's also pretty good. When this defends, you clash. Winner makes an agility. Against certain decks, you're going to win this clash every single time. Like, for example, you're playing against Dawnblade Dorinthia. Maybe they hit the 1 nourishing on the top when you're playing Rhinar and you hit a 5 power blue off the top. Overall, not super likely. You might, you know, both lose the clash if you're on Rhinar or Levia and you reveal something like a Bloodrush Bellow or things like that. But overall, this card has particularly high upside, so I imagine this will maybe see play in Brute. In KO, it's a little awkward because the blue is 4 power, so maybe you could run the yellow, but I don't really know if you want to run that many yellows in KO, so maybe as a Rhinar and Levia card, it's pretty cool. But yeah, take it on the chin. Once again, probably more of a limited card. This one you could argue could see play in CC just because it makes an agility, and agility, once again, has really high upside. So it could be that, you know, preventing 2 isn't ideal, but it helps gets around things like Reprise from Warrior or Centauri Saber. You're not blocking with an attack action. You're blocking with damage prevention. It could be good against Kano. It could be good against a lot of things. And agility, once again, has high upside. So this one in Brute, I can definitely see, having some play. Same for Warrior, but they have, in my opinion, easier access to go again, so you don't really need to run this. But overall, still a good card. Brute block, when this defends, if you control an agility token, deal 1 damage. Probably won't see play in CC. In general, the block cards are really only shining in Victor just because of like Test of Strength and the gold draw card. But maybe there's a world where like the main deck is Betsy and everyone wants to counter Betsy, so you're putting more block cards in your deck. So that's probably not going to happen, but you know, it is a potential situation. Test of Agility. This card is pretty good. When this defends clash, winner creates an agility token. I don't know if you'll necessarily be able to find the space for this card in your deck, just because you already maybe want to run cards like Sync into Bravo or things like that. So I don't know if Test of Agility really makes the cut. Once again, agility has really high upside, but Brute as a class, similar to Warrior compared to Guardian, is generally more proactive. So you don't really want to block as much. And if you draw this and you have tempo and you can't arsenal it, then it's really awkward. Maybe someone cooks up some beat chest Rhinar fatigue deck where you're just blocking all these, ninjas and other decks, whereas versus, Victor, you're intimidating them. So that could be interesting. It's actually quite interesting, but is it going to be good? I don't know. Just thoughts that pop into my head while I'm doing this on the spot. As I'll wind up, this card is really good, especially in Kayo. It is a blue 6 power. Again, it blocks 2, so there's downside, but making an agility token is pretty good. So one card, make an agility, make a might on your turn, is basically the same as that one. What's that one card? The warrior card. Goblet of Blood Run Wine. Create an agility and vigor token, go again. This is basically the same thing in KO, but it's an instant. So I don't know. Card is good. The yellow one maybe sees play in Rhinar / Levia. I couldn't tell you. Rising Speed. If you've drawn a card this turn, this gets go again. This really only is helpful if you have Blood Rush Bellow. I'm trying to think of other cards in Brute that let you draw cards. Oh, draw discard. I'm dumb. Wild Ride, Bare Fangs, Blood Rush Bellow. All of these let you draw a card. So this is a 2 for 5 go again, block 2. But once again, this is more of a limited card. I don't think this is going to really see play in Brute. But I could be wrong. Wage Agility. 3 for 7. You can wager on Agility. This one, again, is interesting because Agility just has the highest upside in Brute of all the tokens, in my opinion. So having this effect could be pretty good. In KO, it is another 5 attack blue, but it blocks 2. So do you want all your blues to really be block 3s to up your, consistency? Or do you want to just, have these to sort of maybe keep chaining, your agility stuff? Like if you give this to a Kano, they're going to do nothing with the agility. So maybe that's something to consider. But, that's one matchup. Like if you give this to almost any other hero in the game, they can make use of it somehow. Lead with Speed. This card's really good. 1 for 3, make an agility. Agility highest upside. This card has very high ceiling, but the floor, it can be pretty low. It's a 2 block. It costs 1. It's a red. It's not a 6 power attack, so it doesn't synergize with your other stuff. Like, you play Blood Rush Bellow, you draw this, and you discard it, and your turn's over. And you're just like, wow. But once again, that's just Brute things. You can lower the consistency, or you can raise the ceiling. That's really up to you. Let's see. Well, this is all Guardian Warrior stuff. Did I cover that all? All the Brute stuff? I think so. Yeah, I went over the Guardian Brute cards and the Warrior Brute cards. So overall, those are my thoughts on the Brute cards. This video is a little shorter than the other ones because I don't have as much expertise in Brute. But let's go over some generic stuff if I can think of anything. Balance of Justice is this card is actually so insane, but it's also like it's getting to the point where things are such a deck building question now because Crown of Providence is really good, Balance of Justice is really good, and they're really good in different scenarios. So is the metagame more slated towards Brute and Blood Rush Bellow? And if there was Lexi, 3 of a kind, obviously, but this Lexi's gone. What other decks draw 2? Brute. Ninja if they play Art of War. Dromai if they play Tome. I'm sure there's others, but there's a lot of scenarios where this card is insane. You get to block at any time, and you get to use its effect at any time. They don't need to be connected like Crown of Providence. Whereas Crown of Providence is just a more consistent effect into everything. Oh, Kano draws 2, but, I don't know if you're going to run this over Null Rune Hood. But whereas Crown of Providence is like you get to draw, you get to maybe filter your arsenal and draw for a new 5-card hand, or, you get to play around CNC, or it's just good into every matchup for the most part, whereas Balance of Justice is a little better into certain matchups. So then it's like, do you run both? Do you only run one because you expect the metagame to be more slanted towards, Balance of Justice? Or, I don't know. I think it's really interesting the way things are going. It really does feel like they're starting to print more cards that are just really... This feels like has a similar vibe to how Uprising felt when Crown of Providence came out. It's similar to how Outsiders came out and had a big effect on the metagame. I think Heavy Hitters is also just going to have a huge metagame effect as well. Hopefully the future sets do that as well. I would much rather, the game have, consistent somewhat even power, but like slanted towards different things rather than, Dusk Till Dawn was just kind of a letdown at the time, but things got a little better once the better decks rotated out of the format. People talk about Dynasty not having as much of an impact, but we were comparing that to Everfest, which was like crazy. But anyways, outside of that, limited stuff, Nasty Surprise. When an opponent's effect, put this into your graveyard from anywhere, create triple tokens. So maybe you play this in Katsu. It is a 0-for-2 block 3, which is basically the requirement for Katsu. The only real downside to this is that like you can't Breaking Scales this compared to like Winds of Eternity, or you can't Ancestral this compared to something like, once again, Winds of Eternity or Lord of Wind or Find Center even. But I'm pretty sure a lot of Katsu decks could just run Wounding Blow and not really suffer too much consistency, whereas this against like a Bravo or against any CNC, like if you have this card in your hand because you have too many blues and you just arsenal shit card and they play CNC and then this dumps into your graveyard, bam, you make triple tokens. That's pretty insane. That Vigor token can be a free Art of War. That Might token can buff up your Be Like Water to 4, which is a breakpoint. You get an Agility, which doesn't matter as much for Ninja, right? But like, I don't know. Maybe you're like me and you're crazy and you want to play Torrent of Tempo into Rushing River. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But overall, this card is good. I'm mainly thinking about it in Ninja. I can't really think of too many other use cases where a deck would want a 0-for-2 3-block. I'm trying to think. I mean, same with Phi. No, not Bolton. Bolton's very synergistic. Yeah, not really thinking of anything else. Warrior makes no sense really to have this, but yeah. Pay up. Let's see. If the opponent defending hero controls a gold, this gets overpower. Gain control of a gold. I don't imagine this will see play. It's a little too niche for my liking. Like maybe against Dromai, you're going first and you draw this. It's a popper. You get overpower. You steal their gold. It's pretty funny. But I don't imagine this will make the cut in a lot of decks. Ripple Away. This art is awesome. I'm waiting for Hidden Dragon to come out for the Crouching Tiger deck. But anyways, discard this. If an action card would create one or more tokens this turn, it instead creates that many -1 of each of those tokens. So very specific for token things. I'm not sure this will really see play. It doesn't hit the KO requirement to 5. Mechanologist is very synergistic. Doesn't make sense in Ninja because it costs 2. It might see play in Guardian once Anathos is gone, but I don't think the upside is really there for it to be a 2 cost that you're playing in a potentially Anathos deck. And it's specifically an action card would create one or more tokens this turn. So it's like, obviously it's good in the limited set, to counter all these cards that create tokens, but like maybe if like, because even Kasai, she makes gold off her hero ability, not an action. Even Olympia makes, I guess, I think he would still make 1 gold from his hero ability, but the card that's actually wagering would make 1 less token. But a whole card to make 1 less token isn't that great. I don't know. Like maybe you can ditch this to stop like Goblet or something like that. But I don't really think that's quite worth it. Very niche. It might have some use case in the future. Like I'm not writing it off, but I just can't envision it right now. Standing Order. A lot of people talked about this card. I think this card is really good, but at the same time, I can't see it fitting into decks very easily. It is a 0-for-4 block 3. When this attacks or defends, you may put a card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck. If you do, this gets +2/+2. So I talked about this before in my Guardian video, but I personally like this card a lot because like as a Guardian, you're constantly you're sometimes running into situations where you don't want to arsenal a really bad blue, so you can play this, but this is a 0 cost, and 0 costs don't really synergize with Guardian decks because this is red, and you're not really wanting to do this with your whole turn. You would rather just have a blue in your deck and swing your hammer. So do you play this in Ninja maybe? It acts as a popper. You can ditch it with Katsu. That's like my first thought. But Katsu is also generally somewhat synergistic with the combo cards. Like you really just kind of want your combo cards, your starters, and then like ancestral and things like that. So this sees the most play in a more generic slanted deck like Kodachi Fi or something like that, where you're not really trying to go for big damage. You're just trying to do some boring Kodachi 1 for 5, and then like this acts as like double as a popper or like blocking 5. Like they see and see you standing order, you block 5, you take 1, your arsenal is safe. It's all good and dandy, but overall, I think the card has a really good effect. I just struggle to see where it fits into the game currently. Like, I don't think Warriors will really want to play this that much because Warriors are kind of starved for action points already outside of their weapon ones. Like, this card would see play in Briar, you know? Like, if Briar had this card, but, like, oh, would this see play in Briar in LL? Maybe? I don't know. Card is good. I just struggle to see the upside. Tenacity. This card's really good. A 0 for 2, block 3, yellow. When this attacks, it gets plus X, where X is the number of defending cards on the combat chain. So not, cards from hand. It could be equipment, I assume. So this is basically opposite Salt the Wound for Fi. If you're playing, Link's Fi, this card is insane because your opponent now has to play around Salt the Wound and Tenacity. Previously, if Fi was popping off, you would just be sure to cover up his attacks so he can't find Salt the Wound, and the best he can do is Lava Verse. If you start blocking, then all of a sudden they get Tenacity and it comes in for 8 or 9 with Shuko or things like that. So this card is really good. It also is a yellow, which is good enough for Fi a lot of times to go, 0 for 3, pitch this, swing Ember Blade, 0 for 3, flame, something like that, Lava Burst, etc. Obviously, blue is better, so you can go mounting, or you can play with less cards. But it's yellow, it costs 0, comes in for 2, it blocks 3, has a really good effect. This will definitely see play in Fi. Seduce Secrets. Generic instant. Look at target hero's hand and top card of this deck. If this was played from Arsenal, draw a card. I'm trying to think if this would ever see play. I don't think so. Maybe not. You get to look at your opposing hero's hand, which is like okay, but this is not like other card games where you get to see their hand and you get to see everything they have for the next like 4 or 5 turns. In Fab, you only get to see their hand for 1 turn, so I don't know. Maybe there's some niche scenario I'm not thinking of, but off the top of my head, can't think of this. Can't think of much for this card. Down but not out. I thought this card was better than it was when I talked about this in my Guardian video because I thought it was 2 conditions. I thought it was less life and control, fewer equipments and tokens as 1 condition. But no, it's less life, fewer equipment, and tokens. So like the tokens is its own consideration. It's not combined with equipment. So, and weapons don't count either, which was something I didn't consider as which was something I thought would count as equipment in my Guardian video because I thought, oh, Bravo runs Anathos. Some people run 2 weapons. Nope, doesn't matter. So this card, very good and limited, probably won't see much play in CC. Reinforce the Line, reprint, Adrenaline Rush reprint, performance bonus. There's a lot of these like, Frontline Scout, Fervent Forerunner, Promise of Plenty card effects. Belittle Briar is not a thing anymore, so unfortunately I don't think this will see much play. Same for Trade-In. Rally the Rear Guard. Hasn't seen play yet. Don't imagine it will now. Lunging Press, reprint. Starting Stake. Don't think this will see play either. If you draw this outside of turn 1, it's just a bad card. Test of Strength. Really, 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 really good in Victor. Maybe there's a world where some defensive Rhinar deck can make use of block cards and then intimidate the other control matchups that have like a better weapon because obviously Guardian's Hammer is better than Mandible Claw unless you're the aggressor. So maybe that's a world where that happens, but in general Victor just has more clash synergy effects compared to Brute, but maybe it's possible that a block heavy Brute deck will be good. Because traditionally Rhinar's bad matchups are aggro decks. If you can somehow fit this hybrid Rhinar game plan where Rhinar gets to block out your the aggro deck and play, I don't know, Romping Club or something, and that's like good enough value to be an aggro deck. Although, yeah, it probably isn't, to be honest, because like Victor has way more synergy with Clash cards. Like you block with this, you win your Clash, you draw a card. Whereas, if you're doing this in Rhinar, you just get to block. But maybe you get the added benefit of people don't know what you're doing, so they board aggro and they don't try to avoid fatigue. So maybe Rhinar gets there. I don't know. Maybe you can win Swiss with that, but then once you reach top 8, people know your deck. People know what your game plan is. So I don't know. A lot of mind games. Lastly, money where your expansion slot cards. I don't know if I'll talk about those in this video. You know what? Why not? Money where your mouth is. Next attack this turn gets +3, and you get to wager gold. So going into this is one of the first cards that was spoiled for the set, and I was quite high on this card because like you can go buff CNC or you can buff Nourishing, especially in like Kasai. I think the gold is more important in like Kasai or Olympia. I mean, this is also kind of interesting that you can play this in Dromai. If you go like, if you have Mirror Guide Kaloria and you go money where your mouth is Kaloria for 7, that's pretty funny. And you wager gold. But if you're doing all that, they're probably going to block it. So maybe you don't wager gold. But anyways, I think just pumps that pump any attack in general are quite unique. I don't know if there has been one before. Like Come to Fight was only attack actions, I believe. There's a lot of ones that pump only your weapon but not attacks. Things like that. So I thought this was a very unique effect in that it pumps any attack, and I still do believe that. But after, just playing around with it a bit, it has, been not a letdown per se, but less impactful as I thought it would be. But, in the decks where it's good, like maybe Kasai or Olympia or things like that, it might still be good. Expansion slot cards. I'm just going to go through these quickly. This card, it is blue. It blocks 3. It's good. This isn't Azuri where you get to play your 0 cost, stealth cards. This is Arachne where, what are you going to do? Play 0 cost blue contract cards? Like, that's not going to do anything. Ancestral Harmony. This card, I think, is also good. It has low downside. The worst case scenario is you draw up and you have, like, no blue attack. So you can't go Kadachi attack. But, just the downside is low. It's a 0 cost blue block 3. Synergizes with Katsu. It's a good card. Will you play 3 of it? I don't know. What do you replace? I don't know. Evo Magneto. Mechanologist Evo. So it's mostly a tech low card. Dash can also play this. Transform. When this defends, destroy a card under it. If you do, gain control of target item. With cost 0/1, controlled by the attacking hero. So it's another... To be honest, I don't know why they printed this because, like, we already had Bright Lights, which was already, like, a ton of Mechanologist Mirror Tech cards. And this is another Mechanologist Mirror Tech card. Like, sure, other decks can have items like E-Pot or... Are there other items? I don't know. E-Pot, Time Snap, Potion of Deja Vu from Kano. But, I guess maybe this helps against Kano. You transform into this and you get to steal another one of their E-Pot or one of their Deja Vus or E-Pots or something. I don't know. I don't think this card would be very impactful. It seems a bit out of place. So, moving on. Judge, Jury, Executioner. This card's great. It's a legendary. You only get to play 1 in your Azalea deck, and it's aim counter synergy, so it's a knock target. It's a Memorial Ground target. It's a good card. We'll see play in every Azalea deck. Almost guaranteed. Reel in. Another trap-based Riptide deck. Trap-based Riptide already has issues. It can't beat just about any deck with a weapon. So, moving on. Sonata Galaxia. This costs 1 less to play for each rune chant you control. Search your deck for a Runeblade aura with cost X or less. Put it into the arena, then shuffle. If X is 2 or more, this gets go again. So this card is actually really good. You control 2 rune chants. Then you get to search out Runeblood Incantation, which is really good for both Viserai and Vincent. So it's basically a 0 for search Runeblood Incantation, go again. And for Viserai, it's a non-attack. So the only requirement is that you need 2 rune chants, which isn't too hard to do, to be honest. So card is good. A lot of times with Vincent, you're rune getting 2 cost cards anyways. So let's say you make your second rune chant, then you play this. You search your free Runeblood Incantation. This has go again, and then you rune get your thing and your turn. Have a good time. Viserai, it's good. OTK Viserai is good. So Living Legend. Luminaris, I'm not excited that Prism is getting a better weapon because all the decks I like to play are heavily countered by Prism, aka Warrior and Guardian. So if Prism comes back in semi-force, I will not be excited to play Bravo or Warrior because those matchups are really hard. This one doesn't synergize with auras, so it's not like... Traditionally, Warrior and Guardian decks are bad against the aura plan because they can't efficiently clear auras, and they can't really aggro down as well as other decks with like Ninja. But, you know, you can run Hybrid Iris Luminaris, for example, and that'll be just fine and dandy. Maybe you know, prioritize Heralds and Angels instead and run this as your only weapon. Sorry, just came back from an edit. Computer messed up a little bit. I'm less worried about this card for Guardian specifically, just because if you're focusing on Heralds and Angels, that's not as bad as the Aura playing into Guardian. But just in general, Prism's just an annoying matchup, so not happy to see it. Dissolve Reality. Each hero puts all cards in their arsenal on the bottom of their deck and creates a Ponder token. Will this see play? I don't know. Maybe. Not too much of an illusionist aficionado. It's yellow, so it could be more of a Prism card, but I guess it's like a Prism anti-Ranger card. I don't know if Prism struggled that much in a Ranger anyways, just because like Arclight Sentinel can just like stop an entire turn. But yeah, Aether Arc. It's a 0-for-1. I don't know how many 0-for-1s are there, so if you're in a Kano deck and you want to remove like a 1 cost for 2, that could be a move. I think there's already Aether Dart, and I'm blanking if there's any more. But Kano experts will know if this is an extra 0-for-1 that you want, that's fine. But overall, it's more slanted for UPF, because you deal 1 damage to each opposing hero, create a Ponder token for each hero dealt damage this way. So it would be really interesting to see like some Kano and UPF just go like wildfire into Aether Arc and just blow up everybody at the table. That would actually be really cool. But again, I don't really play UPF, so yeah. All right, this video is getting long. That was my review on all of the Brute stuff as well as all of like the more generic stuff. Overall, I think Brute is in a much better spot than before. I think Levia was already kind of on the come up even before heavy hitters. So I think all this new card pool will definitely buff up Brute. Whether or not they'll like, you know, be the #1 represented deck, that remains to be seen. Like maybe Kayo will be, because in general people do kind of prefer to play, you know, the more proactive stuff. But I would say that's more so at like callings and stuff. If Kayo is the most proactive and one of the strongest decks in the game, I don't see why people just wouldn't play him. But at the Pro Tour and, you know, Worlds and things like that, people can tend to sway different ways. Like Icelander, I think, wasn't Icelander #1 at this last Worlds, which is, you know, unexpected, but because the Worlds before that, Icelander was like 5th most played or something. But yeah, that is everything in the set that I have now covered. So I guess in future videos, I'll probably do like a predictive tier list of where I think all the heroes will fall. I don't know if I'll just rate them by strength or if I'll do it like sort of how like the metagame works. That remains to be seen. I have some gameplay that I've just been playing with Oliver. Like I've played into his Kasai's Bravo. I've played some Olympia games. I've played some random games. I'll see which one of those I decide or I end up on posting, just because I don't want to flood this channel with gameplay. That's not really my thing. And but yeah, that was all for this video. Definitely like and subscribe if you've stayed this long. I appreciate it. Comment down below. What question could I ask? What is your favorite art in heavy hitters? That's a good one. I don't know what mine is, but maybe next video I'll answer that question. So yeah, that was all from me, and see you guys next time.